Chapter 4. The Absence. For almost a month after my mother disappeared, everything was so out of order. However, as the oldest, I felt that it was my responsibility to embrace my mother's position and try to keep the home in order as much as I could. It was important that I do that for my little brothers and sisters. At this time, my father was mentally deteriorating. He had started drinking more and he was barely home. He told me he was out looking for my mom, but sometimes he wouldn't come home for days. Being 14, with a responsibility like that, it was only by the grace of God that I had the strength to handle everything. Now, it was the first week of school. It was time for the kids and me to go back. Thank God for my Burger King job. I had a little money in my pocket to get us a couple of things. My brother John started selling drugs to try to help, but before then, that was never an option. The first week of school was the hardest. I had to get up extra early to make breakfast, which was a skill my mother taught me. Then I had to make sure everyone showered and was out the door. Then I had to take time to get myself ready. It was a good thing my school was right down the block. Going back to school was the worst feeling because I didn't know if I was coming or going. I couldn't focus to save my life. All I kept doing was looking at the clock, waiting for the bell to ring. When I got into every class, I was there physically, but mentally, I was gone. Towards the end of each school day, I couldn't wait till 3 o'clock so I could run home like I used to do. I was hoping that as soon as I walked through the doors, I could smell the aroma of my mom's delicious dinner cooking and everything would be back to normal. But as I raced down the block each day and walked through the door, my empty apartment would be waiting for me, and a sick feeling would come over me again. I remember sitting up at night praying to God and asking Him if He knew where my mother was at. I wanted to know if she was dead or alive. I asked God, can you please tell me? Because I don't know how much more I can take. The kids are constantly asking where mommy is, and I don't know what to say. The only thing I can think to say is that she will be home soon. I mean, what do you say to a group of children whose ages range from 1 to 10? My heart was hurting so much for my brothers and sisters that I didn't have time to hurt for myself. It was just a constant repeating cycle every day. Several months went by and still no word about my mother, not one lead. It was just like she disappeared. The few friends she had would call and ask for her, so, so that told me that they hadn't seen her either. It was the most helpless feeling a child could ever experience. I don't know what would be worse, finding my mother dead or having to wonder for the rest of my life if she was dead or alive. As time went on, it got so crazy. On top of losing my mother, my dad's drinking problem got worse. His attitude went from loving to angry. I was trying to work, come home, take care of the kids, and hang out and still be a kid. But that wasn't going so well. We went from eating regular food to the Burger King food I resorted to bringing home. My dad simply stopped buying food. He was barely home anymore. We went from loving family to every man for himself. I only made $60 a week working at Burger King, and by the time I bought my bus pass to travel to and from work, that amount was cut in half. When I got home from work at night, the kids were never there. With no supervision, they were out running the streets. Sometimes the kids would be at the bus stop waiting until I got off the bus because they were hungry and anxiously awaiting the leftovers I brought from Burger King. It was a nightmare. I used to lie in bed some nights wishing and praying that when I woke up, this would be just a bad dream. I would hope I would awaken and be able to tell my mother, my father, and my brother John, who I was very close to, that I had the worst dream ever that a kid could have. But it wasn't a dream. This was my reality, and it was getting worse every day. After a year's time, the stress of this situation was wearing on me and my father's relationship. I began to hate when my father was home because he took everything out of me. I don't know if it's because I was the oldest or because I looked so much like my mother. He was so angry when he was home. On top of that, every week after I got paid and woke up, my little bit of money was gone. My dad would take it out of my pockets when I slept. I asked him if he saw my money or took it, and he would tell me I'm living in his motherfucking house, so I have to pay. He would go on to say, "Who the fuck you think you are, bitch? This is the real world. You ain't never going to be anything but a bitch and a hoe," he said with this real sarcastic voice. "Your mother isn't here anymore." I would say, "But daddy, we have no food here. I was going to use that to buy some." Then he would start cursing me with every degrading, disrespectful name in the book. It was so hurtful coming from the only man I ever knew and loved. These words were coming from someone who used to talk to me and teach me everything. I was a daddy's girl. Now he was saying, "You ain't never gonna be shit." It made me create a wall of protection because learning to build this wall would save my mind. I was a growing young lady trying my best to stay strong in a toxic environment, an environment of such confusion, hurt, and betrayal that you would think that it would have pushed me to do all the wrong things in life. I mean, why not? No one is watching or cares. But I knew I had to lead by example, and for some reason, I never let it overcome me. I always knew I had a silent friend, pulling me through all the turmoil and watching over me. God. 2 years have passed since my mother went missing, and the house was out of control. We were all still trying to figure out how to survive without her. Then I found out my father was on crack cocaine. Because I was young, I really didn't know how bad crack was or how addictive it could be. All I knew is he wasn't the same father that raised me. He had a look in his eyes that was full of hurt, sadness, and rage. A couple of times in the middle of the night, I would catch my father in the kitchen in deep thought, looking so sad. I would ask him what was wrong, and he would say, "I tried my best." It would make me very sad. There was absolutely no food in the house. I knew we got food stamps, but my father didn't use them on food. The little money I was making and the drug money my brother made helped with some things, but not as much as we really needed it to. We were always hungry and poor, and that was an understatement. So we did what we had to do to stay together. I used to take a couple of my brothers and sisters to a friend's house, and my brother would take a couple of our brothers and sisters to another friend's house around dinner time. And that's how we would eat dinner. Or we would buy some bread, mayo, and ketchup, mix that together, and have a salad sandwich. Sometimes we would buy a box of rice and put some ketchup on it and pretend we had meat and call it a night. As long as we had something in our stomachs, that's all that mattered. That became our norm. The crazy thing is that all the family we had in New Jersey that we used to go visit on all the holidays never came to check up on us. I found that strange. But to be honest, things were so real I never gave it too much thought. On the other hand, my mother's sister, Aunt Sonia, checked on us a couple times and sent us money. I later found out my dad was keeping it and using it for his drugs. My mom's side of the family didn't like my dad very much because they were from two different worlds. My mom's people were Panamanians and kind of bougie. They felt like my mother marrying my father was a very poor choice. Even though they felt like that, at least they came by and called all the time. They were trying to figure out where my mother was and why she left her 7 children. I think they thought my dad did something to her. As time went on, everybody on the block found out my mother disappeared, and someone called family services. The odd thing is, I was home the day they came. I didn't know they were coming. Shoot, I didn't even know someone called them. I got up early that morning and straightened up the house. My brother gave me $30, so I was able to pick up bread, milk, meat, juice, and some other odds and ends. Surprisingly, everyone was home that day. My brother was in the front along with my father. When we got that knock on the door, my dad opened the door and there was a caseworker coming to interview us. She had got a report that we were living very poorly, and according to her notes, if that was the case, she was going to take us away. As bad as things were, we did not want to be separated. She looked around and went into the refrigerator. We were still in our night clothes. Had she come in the afternoon, she would have known that we were in bad shape. All of our sneakers had holes in them, and our clothes were in bad condition and too small. Thank God that we weren't dressed yet. On top of that, the lady was one of my father's friends, so she really thought that everything was okay. When I look back now, I see that was only the work of God.